I think AGI is nearer than you think. I think the hardest thing around that is adoption. So there are going to be clusters where it is solving.
I'm here with Georgina Hutchinson. Georgina, welcome.
Thanks, Elvis.
So you're with Dalberg Data Insights now
Yes, I am
in London.
in London. That's right.
All right. And I just recently came across a post on LinkedIn that you put up asking how could AI create good jobs in lower middle income countries? And I thought, whoa, two things. First, Georgina and I go way back. We've done some cool things in the past. And the other is that's the question I'm asking. So that's what I wanted to ask you about, if you figured that out yet. And if you
Yeah.
could tell me if AI can create good jobs in lower middle income countries, because that's all I need to know from you.
Yeah, no, the verdict is definitely out, as you well know. Um, we wanted to take a positive spin on it. And I think we had like a really great range of panelists from the tech startup ecosystem in Nigeria through to, academic space in London. But it's hard, can it create good jobs here in the UK or
Yeah.
Germany?
Yeah.
Um, and the starting line is very different uh, in LMIC. So yeah, verdict's out, but it's definitely not a no. It's about people being creative and the platforms being creative. And yeah, you
Yeah.
tell me, Elvis.
No, hey, I don't know. So let's go back. I mean, so we wrote this strategy together in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
The vision, no, sorry, that was not a vision. It was the Ethiopia 2025, Digital Ethiopia 2025, which is
Digital
2025.
Ethiopia. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That was
Feeding into their
2019.
2019, feeding into their growth and transformation plan.
Right.
And yeah.
Right. And I've written a few strategies, and somehow those, I don't know, were never, a lot of times never heard of again. But this one actually, the Ethiopians actually, actually a lot of Ethiopians know about it. It's something that I was
Yeah.
actually, I never know. It was, if it was better than other strategies or if it was just luck of the draw that that one actually kind of caught on.
I think also the Ethiopian government are very good at anchoring kind of the country around the national strategy. It's very different to other economies, not just in Africa, but they like to project the vision so that all stakeholders across the political economy are aware of what the vision is and what they're working towards. That's my hunch. So, yeah,
Yeah.
there was a
Yeah.
stronger buy-in, and it's coming back.
Right. So I wanted to talk to you because you are among a handful of people, and I've deliberately said a handful so that I don't leave anyone out, but it's not many. There's Mats, our friend. You haven't met Mats yet, right? You were supposed to meet with Mats Knudsen,
Yeah,
and
I met with some of his team, but yeah, I met with Max himself.
yeah, you should, because you
Yeah.
are among a very few number of people who I think, and we'll get to this in the conversation, comes to this whole topic of export sectors and technology and global south kind of from a similar trajectory that I do. I kind of come at it from, I guess, what do we call it, first principles. Like I deliberately chose this sector, and most people I speak with kind of ended up here. And it's always refreshing to talk with you because you seem like you've taken a similar approach to,
Yeah.
okay, what's the most important topic in the world, and you ended up here. We might well both be wrong, but I'm glad that I have a companion.
Yeah. I don't think we're wrong.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah, I guess
obviously.
it is first principles. It's like an industrial policy, which is kind of was very uncool maybe 5 years ago. And I think people are coming back to it now, a little bit. So yeah, it is from first principles, particularly when you think about developing economies.
Yeah.
Because yeah, there's about how do you create space for innovation to like, leapfrog kind of the traditional pathways. But at the same time, I think you and I also think of it in terms of you've got a labor market there that a lot of which might be low skilled and historically the pathways to make that labor more productive. So you can see kind of from a generational shift into more productive economies classically involve formalization and movement from like, low skilled agriculture to low skilled manufacturing. And you could see the pathways for mass labor transitions from one sector to another. I guess that's our first principles. And
Yeah.
now you're in a world where not so much an option then. And we can go into that, but it's not so obvious anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and here, maybe we could walk through these first principles, kind of just, I think that's, we never get time to nerd out. So now we have the podcast, we can just do this. I mean, we can just kind of talk through this idea that through this actually very short time of like 250 years of rapid growth, exporting to global markets from cities has been the thing that's been helping countries get rich, right? So initially Britain and then kind of mainland Europe, and then it kind of spread. And now, if you look at these hockey stick graphs, the countries that are coming on latest are growing fastest. This catch up development is growing really fast, right? So, and I'm not just growth, I mean, like human development, child mortality dropping and all that. And this tapping into world markets, global knowledge, and exporting to global markets is just the thing that has worked best so far.
Yeah.
If you're doing it, not just pulling stuff out of the ground, but just like doing it export. If you figure something out that the world wants to buy, that you can create, that you can add value to, that's really the fastest way to make money and in a sustainable way. Sustainable, not like nature sustainable, but sustainable and like
Mm-hmm.
it'll keep going
Mm-hmm.
even past economic shocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been kind of on this horse, like coming from the industrial policy angle, and then thinking, okay, well, is it realistic that Ethiopia is going to take from Bangladesh? Like we've tried that, right? So is it going to be light manufacturing? And if not, there's a lot of East Asians, Southeast Asians. What's it going to be? Can it be digital services? And that's where we end up in like BPO, global business
Mm-hmm.
services, nice and
Yeah.
low entry barriers. And can we move up the value chain? All of that is like pre AI, right? Like so far
Yeah.
we're,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that kind of shift has been happening for a long time. The hollowing out of the middle that we've seen in the global north, you can see that trickle down, whereby, all sorts of advanced technologies have allowed the automation of manufacturing and some elements of services to allow, production to happen closer to demand, to be more tailored. So, um, it doesn't make economic sense for I don't want to name retailers' names, but to move from Bangladesh to outside of
yeah,
Addis, even with a special economic zone, like, it's there are like labor restrictions in place in terms of wage controls and safety parameters, which are, fundamental for the development of human rights, but it prices markets out of being able to compete against the advance of technology. And then when you talk about BPOs, I mean, yeah, there's only been a few places in Africa that have successfully managed to break in there. And some success stories, in Nigeria, like big training schools, and they start to like segment college graduates in terms of even accents, like which parts of the global economy can you respond to. Um, but yeah, with AI, some people think it could be an amplifier. I spoke to this amazing entrepreneur, Amal Hassan, and her kind of legacy um, in the BPO sector in Nigeria. Like what AI can do to like alter voices to potentially tailor certain groups of people towards markets that were previously unavailable, you know. But there's an element of, I guess, you're tinkering around the edges versus the seismic shift in terms of what these advanced technologies, pre-AI, but now with LLMs, can do in the services, particularly the kind of exportable services that historically felt a bit more, you know, the knowledge economy was once protected in terms of automation opportunities. Um,
Now
what
it's
do you
coming
say?
for us.
It's coming for us. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's coming for us.
So I sometimes feel like, I don't know how you, like, in your own life work with AI, but I sometimes feel I'm writing something. So two things. One is I've recently become more skeptical with regard to AI advancements because I feel like a lot of things AI can kind of do, but when you actually want to produce something good, it's depends obviously in which sector, in which task, but I don't know, I need to hear your experience on this. When you actually want to do something real,
Yeah.
people are always talking about, weekend throwaway projects. I mean, I don't want to work on the weekend. I want to do something away from the screen on the weekend. So I don't want to do throwaway projects. I want to do real projects. And so when I do real projects, like right now, I'm writing this GIZ study, and I went back and forth because it's a study about AI, right? And how AI is going to, help people be more productive. So I'm thinking, well, I need to write this with AI, right? So I've gone draft after draft after draft. I'm working with, different prompts and different ways and and in the end, I've just come down to no, like this is my sculpture, this is my thing. I need to write every single word. And just now I saw a sentence in there still from an old draft where there was the word undoubtedly in there. And I don't use that word much. And that was still from the AI.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I, I just don't feel that it's like who called. I recently heard somebody say it's not artificial intelligence, it's pseudo intelligence. Like it's kind of mimicking intelligence, right? But like so it looks almost like the real thing, but not quite. And what are you going to do
Well,
with
because
that?
it's predictive. Yeah, absolutely. That's what LLMs are. It's like a predictive, and you can change the sensitivity around how close you want the prediction to be to what normal humans use. I mean, for sure, I think when you're writing papers, there is some kind of diminishing returns when you're using LLMs, but they do help you cut corners, absolutely. And also surfacing insights as well. Like you'll have your own body of, you know, publications you go to and academics you go to. But sometimes they do surface stuff that, you know, it's in a geography that you don't normally look at or an angle that you don't normally look at. So I do think it's helpful as like a thought partner sometimes. But for
Yeah.
sure, I've found when writing, I guess both of us are writers. So you have a particular style. Um, and so like when you're just using, you know, OpenAI or Claude to do that, it's so clearly not you. And it has such a kind of deadpan algorithmic voice to it that
Yeah.
you're not going to use it. But I do think the more you use it and it gets attuned to your voice, it can replicate better. Um, and it is just,
Okay.
I think it is just getting better. The more data it has on you and yeah, your style, I do think certainly if you upload things, I want it in this style and upload your own work and others that you emulate, it does get better at that. Not there yet, but I generally use it more as a thought partner, like a research partner, kind of
Mhm.
the drudgery of, you know, particularly like deep research, having all the links there, and you could then go down your own tunnels or ask it to go down tunnels for certain sources it finds. That I've found particularly useful. Um, but you know, that's what all the narrative at the moment is. It's not going to necessarily replace humans, but it will replace, from a jobs perspective, humans that aren't using AI. It's about how well you use it to co-create something that you wouldn't do in the same hours, number of hours in the day as you would otherwise.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe I'm naive. In
No,
our talk,
well,
actually, there was we had a let me forget his name now, Alex Domash from The Economist, and he said that they did a study at Oxford, I think it was Oxford or Cambridge University, with some leading mathematicians there and their use of AI. And there is something to be said that actually, um, a specific domain expertise will not be, you know, replicated by AI. You can use it as a thought partner to an extent, but ultimately, when you get down to very specific domain expertise, it at the moment it can't replicate what those experts can do. And the same we find, you know, uh, in Dalberg Data Insights as well. The data scientists, it can do so many lines of code. I mean, GPT do, but it gets to a point when you're troubleshooting, it's hit a block, and if you don't understand the code yourself, it's very difficult to unpick that until you're going all the way back to the beginning again. Um, but the extent to which the LLMs will just get better is, I think it's undoubtedly true.
so what do we do then, Georgina? So we're interested in creating jobs in the global south, like sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of young people. And what you
Yeah.
just said is kind of a crux, right? So on the one hand, we're doing these workshops and, helping people use AI to become more productive. But then what you just said, I just always trip over is that, you need to be a senior professional in order to pick out where it went wrong. Because to be honest, like I don't ask it difficult questions. I don't I'm asking it less and less questions in fields that I don't know about, unless it's just like a vague Google search. Like I can't because I can't trust it. I don't know,
Mm.
what is this true? Now you may say, "Oh, how do you know? How do you know to trust humans?" Well, I don't just ask my neighbor a medical question.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I ask the experts. Then on the other hand, they've got this math Olympiad, right? So the just Gemini and OpenAI both produced models that could get gold medal standard there, which was, I guess, pretty impressive. So that's above human average, way like that's super expert, right? It's so weird because I teach these workshops and I've been working on this every day and I don't know if I'm getting smarter at it. It's just
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know if we're making progress at understanding these things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I guess it's like you use it for different things. And I think in the LMIC context, if we're talking about services, like huge swaths of the population are in the informal economy, for example. They're undocumented, like in Africa, is something like up to 85% of people are engaged in um, informal work.
Yeah.
Much of it is services, vendors, barbers, runners, all this kind of thing. Like AI powered platforms suddenly means that they have a digital footprint to some degree. They might be able, not might be able, they very much can access credit facilities, which historically was impossible for them, but they have some kind of digital footprint to establish credibility or sales. AI platforms can link them to demand, and optimize their time. So I do think there are actually a lot of opportunities which kind of circumvent this first principles question of development we mentioned before, which is very much, I was of the mind people have to go into formal employment. And there were lots of studies, where like a lot of agricultural labor didn't want to go work in the factories. It's horrible work, it's drudgery, it's monotonous. Like for sure you have uh, some kind of formalization in the work that you do, but it's not necessarily good quality work. Whereas now, a lot of most young people in Africa kind of want to have gig work. They like the freedom of gig work. It's kind of in their DNA. And actually, AI can empower them to like have better access to supply chains, to demand, to credit services. And I think that might be an opportunity which is not around the knowledge economy. I think what we were talking about before is kind of like, am I going to be out of a job? For sure, we're going to be out of a job. I think about my kids going through, they're so young in their academic careers, but I'm like, why am I making you do your maths and English? Like
Right.
this, it's about being adaptive. But I think for a lot of like young people coming into the job market in Africa and Asia, we're used to living in that volatile environment. That's just the nature of life. And it can be an amplifier for them in terms of access to means to do more, be more entrepreneurial, and maybe even have some security around that. You know, formalizing structures around, you know, pensions perhaps, or like safe job placements. You know, you could be like matching services around safe work for women in Nairobi, or so I do think there are opportunities in LMICs which are different to the ones that you find here. Um,
What do you think of? Did you hear this? Sam Altman did this World Coin thing where they scanned people's irises to get everybody like kind of this UBI idea, universal basic income, so you can have a world coin, you can have a, a share of the global wealth. Because if we look at, on the one hand, the thing that we kind of like about exports is that it pulls people out of poverty faster than anything else we know, right? Having said that, I'm not tied to exports. Like, if the global north doesn't need workers from the global south anymore because they're automating everything away, what else is there to do, right? So local markets, local problems, right? Using AI to solve local problems. And even if AI does all of that, I think we're kind of in that, paradox thing where we're currently thinking that it's going to we're going to have AGI tomorrow. I, for various reasons, maybe I'm talking out of school, but I think it's not going to be that quick. But then, even though it's not going to be that quick, we're probably going to have it in 20 years, like if not 15 or 12. Like I'm just not seeing it like next year. But even if, who am I to say that it's not going to come next year? But say it comes within our lifetimes, which is kind of within most people's estimates now.
yeah.
If it can then solve all the problems in the global south also, like on its own, kind of, then
You mean
eh,
AGI?
yeah, look, or ASI, kind of like, well,
Yeah.
then we're getting at like, okay, well, whose problems actually? Like, what are we, who,
Yeah,
who
there's
are we serving, right? Like, are we,
yeah,
is the AI serving us, or are we actually getting money for serving the AI? I just recently heard this Dakesh Patel say, like, well, what if you have your Ray-Ban glasses on and the AI just tells you to move these bricks from here to here because you're
yeah,
building the next data center for it, right? And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
paying you
yeah, yeah,
phenomenal money for it. Like
yeah,
we're all billionaires, right? We all have
yeah,
yachts. But what we're actually doing is we're building the cocoon for this thing that is actually maybe not in our interest. So that
yeah,
gets like super philosophical, like, or we
yeah,
become
yeah,
its
yeah,
pets, right?
yeah.
I don't, yeah.
Absolutely. I
I
feel
don't
like
know if
that's
you have any.
beyond the scope of our. Yeah, I don't want to go into the doomsday. I think AGI is nearer than you think. I think the hardest thing around that is adoption. So there are going to be clusters where it is solving um, critical human problems, but probably more in the global north. Yeah, cures for certain, like specifically global north diseases and things like that. But I think in the global south, um, if we go back to the UBI question, I think in I don't like it in the global north insofar that it feels very regressive in terms of like from a tax perspective. It's like a flat tax for everyone. So why would, someone in the lowest quartile be only entitled to the same amount as the upper quartile? I think in NYCs it's different because actually the cost to execute that if you were going to do it on a needs basis would be so high versus just a flat rate. And I think the inequality, certainly in Africa, isn't as stark as you find in other places of the world. And so you probably capture 80 to 90% that could really do with that UBI. And for sure, you lose 10% for those who don't need it. But I think that it's far more fraught in more unequal societies like our own. So, yeah, I think actually it would be an incredible safety net. The problem, of course, in somewhere like, all sorts of like Lagos or Nigeria and Nairobi or wherever is, even if you have a basic income, you don't necessarily have the social services around that to support you, say um, health services or other forms of social safety that you would have, say, in the UK, like National Health Service. So say if you were to get £500 a month or whatever, that would meet your basic needs until you have, you know, one that requires more than that savings what allows. I wonder if that would be as critical an issue in LMICs. I don't know. I've not really given it as much thought. But I think on principle, yeah, UBI in the global south would be quite seismic. I mean, it's a different topic of age, but what do you call it? Cash in humanitarian, but not even humanitarian, development situation. Um, what's the word? When you just give cash as opposed to other forms
Cash
of development
transfers.
assistance, cash
Yeah.
transfers. Yeah.
Isn't that
Uh,
UBI? Kind of.
it kind of is, yeah, exactly. But in terms of the efficacy, like I think there are quite strong, like there is quite strong evidence and RTCs around cash transfers, certainly to people in need versus trying to establish what that needs is from a very global north paternalistic perspective. And even in humanitarian situations, I was speaking to a friend of mine who works in that space, all of the understanding from a lot of the in-person research you do in humanitarian settings, even in places like, well, not so much Gaza now, but in Sudan or whatever, they're wanting investment in development things. They're not asking for investment in immediate food supplies. They're kind of like, we can make do now. But there's very little of that information being passed up to those who are disseminating the humanitarian assistance. So there is something to be said around UBI.
Yeah. But I mean, so walls are coming up around the world that, you guys didn't want to be with the EU anymore because you didn't want people coming across. Sorry, some of you. Um, far right parties are on the rise and building walls. Now, that doesn't chime with UBI. Like, who's going to pay for it, regardless of how rich we get? So that kind of the top, Oxfam does this study. The top 8 people in the world make more than the bottom half of the world's population, and those all are in one way or another associated with Silicon Valley. I think I haven't looked at the
Yeah,
list recently.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and individually, I mean, Altman came up with this idea, like, and then, the world coin, and then Gates had this pledge to give away your money, and a bunch of them agreed. So individually, I think fine, but I'm sure the average American would have a thing or two to say before, Silicon Valley gives all its money away to Sudan. Um, Even though the average Sudanese makes, 50 times less than the average American. So from a
For sure.
utilitarian perspective, it would make total sense. It's
Yeah.
just like from a political economy perspective, I think we're a long way off from that. So, UBI, Harari says, like, if you pick apart like UBI, like what's U and, what's B, and, like what's universal, like who's paying
Yeah,
for it
yeah,
and
yeah,
who's
I get
getting it.
that. Yeah.
And then what's
Uh,
basic? I mean, like what's basic? Like, I mean, who's base? Like, one man's base is another man's ceiling, right? So,
yeah, 100%. I think you're touching now on the global order, which is no, I'm probably not allowed to say some things, I think.
can you solve it for me?
No,
No, you can't.
no, sadly not. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot to be said for global inequality. The top 8 billionaires. I mean, for sure, if they even just gave away 20% of their wealth and redistributed that across how many billion are we now? Seven,
No,
eight,
8.25,
8.2. It would go a long way.
8.3 maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
It would
Yeah.
go a
But
long way.
would it though? And it comes my, my, I don't want to sound like a Randian libertarian, but would it not actually lead to like a puff and then lead to, I don't know. I mean, the structure of like resources in aid, like, so aid effectiveness, right? I've used to study aid effectiveness. And so like it's not really about the money. It's so much about what
Governance.
actually
And
arrives and what actually works. Like a lot of these aid systems. So back then, when I was in university, this is a while ago. So we had Jeffrey Sachs saying that we needed a big push, right? And then we have Bill
yeah,
Easterly saying, well, no, that's not going to work. And
yeah,
then he had all these case studies where it didn't work. So I don't know. I mean, I would love for, and there's some good ideas like, you do some aerial pictures and you see whoever has a tin roof doesn't get the money and whoever doesn't have a tin roof, has a straw roof or whatever, like however you measure poverty best. That's what the Banerjee and them did at MIT, kind of
yeah,
just look at like who's poorest. Well, they
yeah.
just get the
Aerial
money.
study. Yeah.
Ye uh, and that can work until people get the hang of it and figure out, "Oh, that's the
You
poorest
need to
person
put
who
the
just get
tin.
money."
Yeah,
Well, that or the local chief comes and says, "Hey, listen, your tax rate just went up by 400%."
yeah.
Um,
But then
so
you're back to this very difficult chicken and egg thing that's happened around aid investment related to other political considerations. If you demonstrate you're inching towards democracy or other governance factors, that doesn't necessarily enable economies to grow. Uh, and there's some obvious examples, China being one of them, its ability to bring 500 million people out of poverty with no political freedoms or
yeah,
to some degree social freedoms. And actually, you know, well, actually, this was a while ago, but you ask an average Chinese person in terms of would you give up your economic freedom in exchange for political freedom? A lot of them would say no, I wouldn't. But so coming back to the governance question, each political economy is different, and I don't think there's any silver. There's obviously not a silver bullet um, in terms of redistribution of wealth. But I guess you have to start somewhere. What does a pilot look like? What would Sam Altman's favorite country be to do a pilot and see how that shifts the political economy by giving each household $300? Because also the other thing with like cash transfers, it doesn't invest in like the infrastructure. You've got the political infrastructure, but you've also got the bare bones of physical infrastructure that enables access to global markets. But then it goes back to our first question, the wars are coming up anyway, so export-led growth might not be the future anymore as it once was. Even just 10 years ago, it was kind of the obvious solution to solving um, structural development issues. And I think now that there's a question mark around that.
you mean for political reasons,
Not for political reasons. I think more just like whether the global north are interested in sourcing, if it's a
if they
viable
still
route
need it.
anymore, if they
Yeah,
still need it. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I mean, Trump talking about reshoring, manufacturing back to the US, that didn't start with Trump. Biden was trying to do the same thing, but there aren't those jobs there anymore. Whether you're American or whether you're Bangladeshi, they're just not there. But the political will to import is probably closing for some places, or at least a narrative needs to shift for it to be an opportunity for, new entrants in the global south, I think.
Is that real though? I just feel like I hear these guys talk and, Trump more than the others, but
Yeah.
you're talking about like, uh, we need to bring these jobs back and all that. But like economics 101 is that, if you ask a company, would you rather have a sign on your door that says help needed or actually get that help from somewhere, say digitally, right? And get it for cheap and get it, somebody working hard for less money, that's services exports, right?
Yeah.
And then if politicians are kind of winning that popularity contest by saying they're going to bring all the jobs back, and kicking out the people who are picking strawberries currently, uh, I don't think that's real. I think the real thing is if you go around the companies in England, in Germany, and you ask, "Hey, what do you guys need?" They think, "Well, we're gonna use AI. We're gonna build agents now."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I say, "Well, have you tried?" "Well, yeah, we're kind of, trying." And then a lot of things don't work, and then you end up, well, you're gonna need a developer. You need a team. You need a kind of some end-to-end solutions, and you need some support. And that's where I'm back to kind of IT outsourcing from other
Yeah.
countries where there's people actually wrapping their heads around this stuff. So I'm actually, in that sense, quite optimistic in terms of the economics of globalization, services globalization. I'm not sure about manufacturing right now, but
Hmm. Are
the
you
the the
worried then about the political will of these companies to do that? Or no, maybe not political is the wrong word, like a lack of trust that maybe AI can or other advanced tech can like reduce that perceived risk of sourcing from, say,
I don't know if I'm answering, if that's what you're asking, but let me answer what I
mm,
think, and then you tell me what you were, if that's so. I think so. There's people like myself who now think they can do a lot of stuff with AI, but I actually can't.
yeah,
I can do 90%. And for that last 10%, that's this Javon's paradox, right? Like for that last 10%,
yeah,
I still
yeah,
need help. And then
yeah,
I go out and say, hey, can you fix this mess I made over the weekend in my throwaway project?
yeah.
I don't want to throw it away. I want to actually use it. Can you help me, find this? I've had this with this podcast, my colleague Ann and I, we thought we're going to, edit the pod. We're going to go to an AI supported editing platform and we're going to do it ourselves. And, I
Turns
mean,
out,
it didn't work. It just didn't. I mean, maybe I just couldn't get it going, but uh, it's so much better to have a real video editor. And
yeah, yeah,
shout out to
100%.
Yoss. Just
Well done, yours.
it's yeah,
You're safe for
yeah.
now.
Well, yeah. And so it's the kind of thing that, or doing my taxes. I mean,
Yeah,
that's another thing where I'm thinking, okay, going to do my taxes with AI now. And then you sit there for a week and you think, oh boy, I should have just done the
done it
tables
myself.
myself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
But I
sure,
think
it's
there's something to be said about the trajectory as opposed to the
yeah,
now.
yeah,
And it comes back to your, is it going to be AGI in 3 years, 5 years, 20 years? But there is a LLMs have only been around 3 years,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
there
No,
is
I
a,
get you.
and so then there's a window of opportunity uh, for services exports. And then also there's something around like there will be a real value in the human interactions. I'm sure you love working with Joss. I wonder how much you actually do face to face, or at least like voice to voice chats around like the edits that need to be made and actually valuing that interaction, even if it's through a webcam. But
Yeah,
it's still like you and I, we haven't seen each other in person for a very long time, but it's still like a human interaction through the camera that
yeah, yeah.
I think a more value will be placed on that. And then it'll be about the interpersonal skills of humans that makes it worthwhile. And then you come back to the question, what makes it attractive to do that with someone in India versus doing that with someone local, not local, but should say in Europe. And the price would be a big one there. But that'll be the trade-off. It's like, I can't afford someone in Germany. I can't afford someone in India. It is cheaper to do it with AI, but what's the difference in service I'm getting between those two opportunities? Um, and understanding where you might build up that value add for the global south in terms of skills that might meet that.
You think that, so maybe disagree with you a bit here. I think that I love Yoss. He's great. But if AI could do it, it's the kind of job that I don't think I would need. I would miss that human interaction. Like I would, Bill
Yeah,
Gates recently was asked what jobs are going to be left for humans, and he said, "We'll never watch robots play baseball, no
yeah,
matter how good they'll get at it." Right?
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, we'll
So
see.
we'll
But
see. Well, people like watching car racing. I can't get around that. Like, but it's still it's a sport, but it's still a person in the car. If it's just the car, nobody watches chess engines play against each other,
yeah,
but people do watch humans play against that human struggle, right? So are
but
we
then
all going to be? Yeah,
it comes back then down to what we were talking about before about the opportunity of services export versus opportunities for local services, formalization of services, because that's the tactility thing that you're talking about, right? There's your baseball players, there are your physical nurses, there is having your haircut, like informal or formal services. that are done person to person that can't be exported, there's an opportunity for AI to make those more secure. But where you have services that are exported, and like you said, digital IT services, coding services, production services, is there going to be an opportunity for that in the long term? I don't know. I think I was playing devil's advocate before in terms of that human interaction, but that is kind of the one advantage we currently have over LLMs, at least.
Well, I think in certain, if you just need the final product, so I wouldn't put a hairdresser in that category because if I could get a helmet that cuts my, well, I'm not a good example. Let's say you, if you could get
Me,
a if you could get a helmet that gives you the kind of haircut you want, um what what you don't need somebody
yeah,
asking how your week was. You just get that done. It takes 4 minutes or 3 minutes and it's done and you don't have to
okay,
go
yeah.
anywhere.
What about nursing though, then?
Actually, I'd make the argument against nursing. You don't want some person wiping your butt. Like it's if it's a robot that isn't the person, it might be. I mean, if you're or what,
Sure, there's
so
elements of elderly care which people would rather were
have
robots
a
versus humans. Yeah.
yeah
And then it's about the taskification trend around jobs in general, but then also which ones are suited to AI and we would have a preference for AI robots to do versus those we would have a preference that humans would do.
yeah
Um,
yeah.
but you tell me which services exports you think would be protected, because I can't think of very many that would be.
Well, if we go to the metaverse and I don't know if we should go there, but if we all wear haptic suits, I could think of some services that could be done remotely that actually aren't used to require proximity in the past.
Mhm.
Um, Not sure those are the. I don't know where to place those on the skills ladder if that's the upward mobility we want, but
Yeah.
um, so so in the pandemic, a lot of people kind of left their jobs and became YouTubers and became did the kind of thing they wanted to do. Creative, what's the, like, we have the tertiary economy, which is services. What's the quaternary economy, right? Like, what's the economy
The
that comes
creative
after the,
economy.
yeah, go in the creative economy. You're creating
Yeah.
something, not because, so I'm let me think this through, and this is going to be messy, but like, let's work this out. Not because of the final product. I still don't think that music is and people vigorously disagree with this, but I do think that Suno or so could actually do music soon that is actually has some sort of soul in it that, yeah, that actually touches you. Right? If you do the Pepsi test, obviously it's nicer to be in a concert room where you feel the vibrations, but you can also fake that, right? And then
Mm.
have that. Interesting, because I don't have it for writing. I don't think AI can write a novel because that's my field and I think it's crap at that. But I do have it for music where I
You
think,
see
yeah, yeah,
Sam
it could.
Altman's prompt, his short story.
Sorry, no, I didn't.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So he
Yes,
prompt he
he asked for a metafiction short story, maybe on the human condition or something. I can't remember quite exactly what it was. It was
okay.
very
It
good.
was
He
okay.
had
So
Jeanette Winterson saying it's coming. Um,
no, I
gone.
didn't or yeah, I didn't see that. But so if we are so podcasts, so long form podcasts, let's look at this. I love these conversations because I have no questions written down. I don't know if anybody else will love these conversations that I'm holding with people, but here's the thing. It won't be the medium. Like it'll be that I'm
Mm,
just not doing it well if people don't like it because I know I love it when I hear other people do long
good
form
one.
podcasts because they're doing what's primordially human, which is we sit around the fire, two people speak, everyone else listens, and they just there's a dance of thoughts, right? I think that's a human experience that, same as playing chess, we want to see humans do that.
Mm,
So it's the process that's that's exciting for, or that's interesting for people, not the final
yeah.
product, right? So painting a picture
But
that's
the
hanging
final
on,
product
yeah,
has been, I'd say, in terms of, human endeavor, the creation of the arts, whether it's painting, sculpture, the written form, that product has been iconic in markings of human development, I'd say, as opposed to just the process.
I know I'm on thin ice, and like, but I do think that if I go to a museum and I see a piece of art, I don't know if it necessarily needs to be have been painted by a human, or created or sculpted by a human for me to be touched by it. I don't know,
Mm.
to be honest. But I do know that if I hear two soulless machines speaking to each other on a podcast like Notebook LM,
Dalberg Data
and they find everything fascinating,
so
uh
many
is
superlatives. Yeah. But that's also because maybe it's not very good right now and it will probably get better.
right, right, right.
What is Notebook LM's been around less than a year. I remember when I first discovered it, I was kind of like, oh God,
Yeah,
here
yeah.
we go. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about um, non-human created or LLM created art. Feels very feels very like personal. And I feel like lots of people, I mean, lots of friends who are in the creative industries who, when, they know that I work in AI, like, you're dead to me, you know. Because yeah, it's a real like affront to not just people's individual work, but it's also like their passions. It's what differentiates us from other animals is this pursuit of something that we feel encapsulates, you know, the human experience beyond needs being met. Um, I think I listened to something else recently, like Hemingway died having made £3 in the last year of his life on $3 on the sale of his works. You know, he would be, the great American novelist. It's not about his experience of producing that work. Death is by the end of his life, but what is built into the psyche of the American dream, and it's. I think the piece itself is quite important. So the idea that in 30 years' time, a lot of the work will be created by AI, and I'm sure you'll have like in bookshops or video stores, not just by genre, but the human section, the AI section, the co-created section, and you pick and choose. Maybe in history, if we're still learning history, you have different disciplines: history of art, history of robotic creation, and the likes. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it feels, yeah, I feel it's quite a personal relationship to creativity.
Do you
And
think, sorry,
there you go.
do you think these things can become conscious? So do you think it ever will feel like something to be an AI? Do you think that's outlandish, or do you think there's
No, I think it's close, I'd say. Not that I've based it on anything, but I don't think it's that outlandish
so it's
because
complexity?
it's complexity. It's like I think it's only Anthropic that are trying to get under the hood in terms of how does it actually work. But all the other frontier AI companies aren't doing that. So
Just
who's to
racing.
say? They're just racing, but who's to say, they can't create neural pathways around empathy that feedback. I mean, I think it's extremely complex. Um, and there's lots of literature to suggest that that is not far off.
So what do you think is worse? A thing that actually isn't conscious, convincing us that it's conscious, that we need to give it human rights, or a thing that actually is conscious to some extent in there, and we're treating it like a machine, like a slave? I mean, those are both tricky. Is
I yeah, I don't know. They're both terrible. I'd say the second is worse because it's that's a reflection of us, isn't it? Um, i.e., they are conscious and we don't treat them as such. Um, that's a race to the bottom for humanity as well, I think.
Georgina, I think we're in over our head. Like if as I speak
Oh
about
yeah.
this, we're not nearly prepared for what we're doing here because
No,
we
of
don't
course
know
not.
where human consciousness comes from, and we're just racing towards it, and we're not stopping. Why? I mean,
Because it's a race now. It's like, it's a space race, except there's no, not that we could hold government to account, but these are, individual enterprises with their own shareholders that are all bought around the race, ultimately. So the race is out of regulatory hands to some extent because you have China in it as well. So, um, yeah, it's Pandora's
but
box.
that's just a coordination problem. I mean, we've got literature on this. If we all agree that we're playing Russian roulette with three bullets in the chamber, yeah, why are we all doing it if we I mean, even like the
Well, there's
optimists are
so many
like,
why questions.
sorry?
Many why questions. I mean, how are we in this political world that we're in now? Why would you have voted for Brexit or Trump? Um, for sure, there are the facts and there's the logic, but there is also then the appetite.
Some people say we need to get to AGI as fast as possible because we're lost without it. Like for the reasons that you've just like we
Mm.
can't get along, you know.
But are you suggesting then that the belief is that actually we need to hand over control of our lives and political destiny because we're not doing it very well?
That would be it, right? That would be that argument because we are alignment, it's what is alignment? I mean, alignment with whom? So we can't
Yeah.
agree with each other and we're stuck on our social media echo chambers and we just need to kind of make sure that we build this thing before we destroy ourselves. That's kind of
Yeah. I mean, building that thing though, what is it going to solve? Thinking of it from a development lens, I think it could solve a lot of the SDGs around health, um, climate for sure, despite
yeah, it's like
how much
like
water use it takes, but they will solve for that very quickly. uh, but what it does around like, inequality or even poverty and inequality are related. I don't see how it can solve for that. And
well, I
equality
mean,
for
like
sure.
Brave New World, right? Like we all take a Soma pill and we'll be fine. If you just don't make it a Soma pill, but what you say, well, we're all gonna like child mortality is gonna drop to zero. It's just gonna healthcare is just gonna be phenomenal. We're all gonna be with free gym memberships and maybe not even gym memberships. Maybe we get these belts that make our bellies stronger,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we all get on the Ozempic and it'll be great. And we can just go in the park and we can have these kinds of conversations and anybody who wants to listen can listen or have their own podcast. And that's just going to be our life. Like we're going to be pets of the thing that's doing the growing, whatever that growth is moving towards. We've just handed over that baton and we're just doing our, like, I mean, it's going to, like, from a utilitarian perspective, we're going to do a lot of poverty reduction or it's going to do it for us. But what's the meaning of life then?
But you have a very utilitarian perspective insofar that, how much would you say of you as an individual live for your free time and you live for the relationships in your life versus the belief in your work? I mean, there's lots of people who work for money that do it just because they have to. I mean, I'm not talking about creative output. If we put creativity aside, because everyone is creative, but a lot of people don't use their free time to be creative because they'll be investing in relationships and joy and what gives them pleasure and
Yeah.
is not to be dismissed. I'd say the majority of people are working to service that. um, but we like the idea that humanity is different to other species because we have this pursuit of um, art or other summations of what it means to be human, sport, for example. That's what distinguishes us from other species. And on the one hand, what distinguishes us is also joy, I think. Maybe not all animals, but the pursuit of pleasure. Maybe that's what most people want.
But you started by saying that I'm different than that because I'm interested
Because
in.
interested in development, you're interested in, you know, how do you enable poor countries to grow and be at the same socioeconomic level as another, which maybe like 100 years ago, if all their needs were met and you didn't have, global digital platforms and news and consumption of, insights into how other people live, that would be fine. Whereas now you do, so there would be for sure my needs are met, but why is it that someone in California gets to have a yacht and I just have my needs met? So there will always be this comparison that they want more. Um, but that's going off topic. What were we talking about? We are talking about, I think for you, your work isn't necessarily just to pay your bills. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So,
Service
but
your
you're
free time.
saying, yeah, yeah. And I don't know if that's a curse or a blessing, but you're saying for most people, so you have this 80-20 rule, maybe for 80% of people, it's just like, let me make some money so I can go on holiday and I can, play video games on the weekend.
Yeah. And I'm not
Let me
saying it
just,
has to be bad work. You obviously don't
yeah,
want to be unhappy in work, but it's
yeah.
not necessarily a passion. I don't want to put a number of 80-20. I don't know what it is. I think for sure people follow vocations
I
because
use
that's
that number
something
for
they're more
everything.
aligned to. Yeah, it's just because it's something they're aligned to, but it isn't necessarily something that if you took that away from them and it's just pleasure. I mean, I don't know actually. I'm going to retreat on that because what is the purpose of life then if it's just exist?
Yeah.
Part of it is
So,
the struggle that makes the reward so much better. Even if it's a struggle of Monday to Friday, the reward is 2 days of not your Monday to Friday. I
but
don't
let
know.
me let me flip that around then. So, if most people are working for the money and then having their free time and just enjoying life with their family, building, investing in relationships, and just being happy that way instead of having this weird drive to change the world for the better, whatever that means. The most ideological people have a lot of times created the greatest destruction in history,
Yeah,
right? So maybe
absolutely.
that's the path we're on. Uh, uh, but for those people, wouldn't it be the same if AGI ran the world? Than, working for the man or working for the machine?
Working for the machine, yeah. Except what would they be working on? You were talking about like laying bricks for another data center.
Yeah, like plumbers, I guess. I had Johann Stein on here who said he's going to tell his son to become a plumber because that's the last job that's going to exist. So
Yeah,
doing the piping for the data center, the cooling,
the cooling. Yeah, for sure. I think there
and then you
has to
get paid
be,
well.
you get paid well, but there's probably got to be some degree of you being, um, that's not a vocation, maybe. You might still have some angst around doing that versus, say, if you were a doctor, which is you believe in it, but you are still doing it mainly for work. And what you get most joy out of might be, for example, investing in those closest to you relations. I don't know.
Let me
I think
just,
it's very philosophical and
yeah, yeah.
what is the purpose of being a human being?
Let me reset this for a minute. In 2014, I read this Brynjolfsson and McAfee book, The Second Machine Age.
Yeah.
Had we had that conversation in 2014, or let's go back 2013, this would be absolutely ridiculous. Maybe, people hear this, they find this absolutely ridiculous what we're doing right now anyway, but many, like, much less than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
right? Like this time right now for us to be having this conversation, like, you know, what do we do after AGI? Like this is a 5 year plan. Like most strategies have 5 year plans, and the 5 years is the smallest time horizon. Usually, like you had a vision 2030. Could you
Yeah.
imagine a vision 2060 right now? It's
Like,
just ridiculous. So
yeah.
for us to be talking about the weird things we talked about in the last 10 minutes and to not be totally embarrassed about it uh, is just emblematic of the times that 5 years from now, according to a lot of smart people, we're going to be living in a world where it's going to be so different. I mean, maybe not. Maybe this is just all hype and this is the .com bubble for AI, right? And this is just going to be ridiculous. 5 years from now, it's going to be not much different. Maybe my AirPods can do, instant translation, uh, but not much more, right? We got
Yeah.
140 characters. We didn't get flying cars, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe it is coming that way. And this is what, like, if you're looking at like Harari writes, like these long history, like, is this, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter if this is coming in 5 years or in 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even in 30 years, if we stay healthy, we're going to be around, and definitely our kids are going to be around. And what is that world? Like, are we going to be living with something that is conscious?
Yeah.
And we need to treat it as an equal. And if it is conscious, it might become more than an equal. Like it'll be smarter than us and it'll have its own goals. Or is it going to be something that's not conscious, but it confuses us much more so than today? Social media, these stupid algorithms
Yeah.
on social media are
Yeah. Yeah.
confusing us. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just to me, the more I talk about this or think about this, the less confident I get that we are on a good path, to be honest. Like,
Yeah. 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 It's probably if you think about like the nuclear arms race, what pulled us back from the brink? Was it the Cuban Missile Crisis, or was it the fact that there was an acknowledgement at some point that the two sides could very much blow up the world? What is the equivalent of that in the AI arms race, which brings a coalition of, I guess it'd be, heads of state of, where's the Security Council or whatnot, but then also the Altmans, the Jerry Amadeus, um, Musk, sadly, but brings them together around a table to actually define, what is the next, doesn't have to be UN, but convention around expansion. Because otherwise it will be a race to the bottom. And I don't think there's going to be like a groundswell from the population to push back against that, to change that tide. I think it's going to be like a technological scare at some point. And by which point, maybe the sentient beings will be out there and there'll be something around how do you decommission these sentient beings and not treat them as sentient in order to do that. Um, it will be a big, probably a security and political moment at which everyone steps back. But I think unfortunately, I think it will probably have to come to the brink before we.
but yeah, but is that possible? That's the thing. Like, it's so much
Yeah,
more powerful than nuclear weapons, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it's not the push of the button; it's out there.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I don't even think like a Keir Starmer or I don't think a
yeah,
normal head of state can grapple with that question. It's a global coalition of the key leaders, Xi Jinping and Trump, and even then, they don't have control.
no, no, no. So let's look at this. So this is what I love too. You're a political economist. Kind of, you do policy. You understand these, dynamics that most people don't think about. So we have these two threats. The one is what I would call the North Korea threat, that we have one person with all the power, right? This is why kind of they say they built OpenAI, because they didn't want, Demis Hassabis in Google have all the power, like have this Frankenstein monster, right? And then on
Yeah.
the other end of the spectrum, we have what I would call like the Somalia threat, which is everybody has all the power. Like, we don't have a centralized government, meaning we build a bunch of deep seeks and a bunch of llamas, and they're out there in the world, and everybody can, adjust them, and everybody can use these as weapons. That's also a threat to
Hmm.
peaceful, harmonious somehow, some some institutionalization of coexistence, of human beings in a society, right? So those two threats, we need to find that path that Asimoglu says, like that path between those two poles. Now we have different philosophies. There's most of the people building this stuff didn't study, these kinds of social systems like political economy. They're coders. They're good
Yeah,
developers. They're engineers, right?
yeah.
And some of them read Ayn Rand, so they're more worried about the authoritarian part. Some of them actually come from the world of having built social media platforms, so they saw what happened on their own platforms in Myanmar or in
Mm-hmm.
Ethiopia. So they're more
Mm-hmm.
worried about
Mm-hmm.
the,
Mm-hmm.
everybody getting the weapon, right?
Yeah,
So they're worried
yeah.
about we have to make sure that this doesn't get out into the wild, right? But these aren't the kinds of people that, not to kind of say that people in the social sciences are the smartest people or the wisest people, right? I'm thinking of who that would be, like a person with little glasses and, big beard and a bookshelf. I don't know if somebody, you know what I mean though. Like, so we have some knowledge in humanity about social systems, and we have different threats, and all of that, like this kind of coordination problem, like threading that needle between the North Korea problem and the Somalia problem, right? Like one person having all the power and everybody having too much power and nobody playing by the rules. On top of that comes that the thing might get away from us. Like,
Yeah.
this is so far, I've just ranted on about the problems we have with
Individuals,
each other. Yeah.
humans.
Like, as
Yeah,
long as the thing is a weapon, right? Like the
yeah,
nuclear weapon
yeah,
analogy.
yeah,
But this is more than that because it's already been conniving to kind of upload itself. And we've had this discussion throughout the 2010s. We need to develop this in a box. We need to not let it out into the internet. And as soon as we had it, we like let it out and
gone.
just,
It's gone.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's like, yeah, let's just like, let's just see what people think of it. It's a great toy. It's a great tool.
yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, there's
No, I've got nothing too sensible to add. I mean, the only thing around the political economy thing is it's not with, academics, and hindsight's a beautiful thing. You can see how certain factions and the stars aligning meant that this thing happened, right? But, you know, heads of state, people that have been voted in, aren't they might be political animals, but they're not assessing the situation from a political economy lens to see that, these are the interests that need to be aligned at this moment in time. And so you're right. You have your Somalia, you have your South Korea, and then you
North
have
Korea.
it.
South Korea is
No,
fine.
sorry, it's not South Korea, North Korea. Uh, that's going out. Um, and then, then you have this new species that we've created with its own set of political economy considerations or uh, incentives and areas of empathy. Yeah, I don't know.
So for the next three
Too
years,
late.
next 2 years or so, let me bring you back to now before we,
Yeah.
because I mean, it sounds like on the
It
one
gets very
hand,
sci-fi very quickly
it does, but then they're for good reason, right? Like I always
because
feel
it's so
like, oh man,
close.
we're nerding out, but it's like if we feel weird talking about it because it seems so, way off, then who's going to talk about it? I mean, who's going to figure that stuff out? Like I just think it's just the people who think it's normal because they read a lot of sci-fi, but it's moving so
Yeah,
fast.
it's so fast. Yeah, absolutely. Um, what did you want to say though?
I mean, just to kind of bring it back to the here and now, just I mean, if anyone is still listening, uh, uh, next 2 years or so, like what do you think a 15-year-old Rwandan or Ghanaian or Ethiopian should be learning now? Like what do we how do we prepare? You know the demographic tree, like the
Yeah,
Christmas
yeah,
tree. Like we've got the cohorts of 0 to 4 year olds are still the biggest in sub-Saharan Africa. So
yeah,
we got
yeah.
all these young people coming onto the labor market. The societies are changing so fast in Africa. What do we kind of what's the policy recommendation for a Ministry of Education right now today?
Oh yeah. So, I mean, on the one hand, there is, the kind of this is being the global north. I think it applies in the south, like the resilience question and about adaptability. I think the basic skills very much still need to be there. The ability to communicate and present yourself. So it's not necessarily written anymore. It could be voice notes now, like well, AI platforms can like erase kind of some of the rough edges around that. Um, but how do you teach someone to be innovative? Like the agentic era is coming, right? So, if you were a young Rwandan person coming onto the labor market, like how do you find your niche and what tools do you need? So whether it is not just prompting, but like, tools to adapt constantly to the new set of AI applications and use cases that are emerging to the market that you can make it serve your position in your local economy. Does that make sense? So I don't think it's learning the base underlying tools around using these platforms. If you want to be a coder, great, but I don't think necessarily opportunities for junior coders are not necessarily there anymore. But there is a lot to be said for those who want to train and have a specialism to understand under the hood of some of these things. But an ability to use them and constantly adapt in your ability to use them is key.
So do you want
Um,
your kids to use AI more or less as they're learning?
uh, as they're learning,
You know what I mean, right? Like, do
yeah,
you
yeah,
want,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd
is
probably
it
want them
taken
to use
away?
it more, but I'd
Yeah.
want them to be able to invest in the basic skills as well. And I don't mean like literacy and numeracy, but like the opportunity to explore things that you're good at, things that you enjoy. So it comes back to that thing we were talking about before. This is just, at least in this current moment in time, where like domain expertise are still very much valued and AI can get you to a certain level. But for you to go you know, the next mile, you need to have that domain expertise. But you only find out if you're interested in those by having curiosity. So I think for my children, I'd want them, yeah, happy to use AI, but I'd almost want to put a curfew around like 20% of your time or whatever it is. I mean, my kids are too young to use at the moment, but then also to have the opportunity still in the curriculum to explore lots of other avenues, whether it's, in the science, if it's in the arts, but so that you might find your niche. Um, because I think, that teaches you also to be curious. And I think if you can take that curiosity into your adult life, that might make you more resilient to be adaptable to whatever technologies beyond LLMs will be out there in like 10, 15 years. What do you
But
think, Elvis?
you said your timeline for AGI is less than mine, right? So
Yeah, for sure. But AGI isn't going to solve everything,
so you think there's
right?
not a
You
fast
might have
takeoff?
AGI. Yeah, exactly. I think adoption is a completely different question. I think you could have AGI and apply it to specific issues. You're still going to have large swathes of the world that aren't using it for various reasons. Access will be a big one, but also, cultural barriers, also just general adoption levels. Like older people are slower to adopt things than younger people. That's just in all walks of life. People are creatures of comfort. So I don't think necessarily, even though it'd be here, and I think it could be here in 5 years, but I don't think it's going to then penetrate every facet of, the economy. Like I look at my dad, he's not that old. He still prefers checks. He doesn't like sending money online. The opportunity to send money online has been around for like decades now, you know, but he just won't do it. And he's only 60 something, late 60s, so it's the, yeah, adoption will be slow.
So yeah, maybe it's a terminology thing, but when you speak of adoption, you still think we're in charge, right? So when we have AGI and it's as good as any human at any task, and you get
It's
five
like
of
knowledge
them,
work.
yeah, right, but you get five of them to start a startup, what's to say that AGI doesn't quickly turn into super intelligence, right? That it can actually improve upon itself. And that's would be like a fast takeoff,
Mhm.
right? I mean, do you think that is sci-fi? Like, do you think that is kind of out of the question in this century? Or do you think like,
No, I
so is
don't think
there,
so. I mean, the trajectory is already there, like not what, 5 years ago, startups would measure themselves in terms of like headcount growth. Now you don't have that. A very successful startup would, in a few years have what market cap of 50 billion with 3 employees. I mean, that trajectory's already happened. Um,
yeah,
but you know, producing stuff and making money isn't everything that humans do and live for. If people have enough money to like exist, there's still lots of physical interactions that people use. For sure, everyone is in front of their laptop a lot of the time, but I don't. I think the opportunity to do that will be there, and that would change the structure, like a social structure in terms of inequality and where capital is allocated. But people still physically live and physically engage with each other and probably want to still go to a baseball game uh,
yeah,
or want to see a physical orchestra. So I do think it's just kind of what is the value add of humans doing certain activities um, be a thing.
not to hark on about this, but we're the in the minority of people in the global north that still have kids, right? So
I don't know about that.
it,
Most of my friends have kids, actually, but
yeah, that's yeah, it's a self-selected circle. Uh,
maybe, yeah.
yeah. So, well, most kids are in sub-Saharan, like a lot of young people are in sub-Saharan Africa. We kind of work there. We kind of like talk to, the ministries and help by writing strategies, most of which don't get read, and some of them do, like the Ethiopian one. Uh, what do we? And I know I'm asking you, I'm outsourcing the hard question to you. What do we tell young people, like 15-year-olds, to be doing now to prepare? Should they be using AI to learn this language of the aliens? Should they be understanding the quirks of AI, what it's good at and what it's not good at? Should they be doing that most of their time? Or should they be locking themselves away in analog rooms to actually train their minds to work independently and not use AI as crutches? Right? Or should they be doing both, like kind of
I
go to
think
the
they need to be
sauna?
doing both. I think they very
Yeah.
much need to be doing
Like
both.
sauna and cold plunge
100%.
kind of, you know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think the ability to think critically is vital. I mean, I think about you and your use of AI to say, like, write your papers. And because you've been doing it for so long, I know you're not as good as me. Because you've been relying on AI from when you're 11 to 15 to write your papers. Of course, you're never going to be very good at writing papers. But I think doing both helps. And I guess it's about structuring the curriculum to reward both of those. And then also in the workplace to reward both of those. Because for sure, it's quicker to do something with AI. And you got to think of it as like I don't know what the difference in the model is. It's not so much outcomes rewarded model as much as it is like skills accumulation rewarded model, like how you test for that, like how do you test for, you know, learning a skill, a trade, or ability to write, or ability to plumber. Plumber's a bad example, but you know what I mean. And how do you assess that skill versus like the outcome, which is an essay on, you know, the political economy of, you know, electrification in a country, which you can get ChatGPT to write. Um, but it's like rewarding the steps by which you get there to teach, I think, young people to do that themselves. And then they can amplify those skills with AI. I think not using AI would be is crazy because it's here. You're just going to do yourself a disservice because there'll be
Yeah.
people much better at prompting than you are otherwise.
But
Um,
also it's so dangerous, right? Like, so the Chinese have this, Chinese put out TikTok for us, but then they have these rules around, we see this as terribly paternal, but I could use some of those roles. I mean, I get lost on X, I get lost on the platforms. I want to
Yeah.
just let me just look this up quick, and 45 minutes later, I'm like, why was I here?
Where was
You
I
know,
then? Yeah.
so I mean, I could use some structure, some help in find like not getting so scatterbrained. It's a
But
tough
also
environment.
it is a tough environment, but that's the social contract that the Chinese have with their population. I mean,
Is it? I mean, that's the question, right? Like, it's the harmonious way. And this is back to the race, right? I could see merit in both systems. I mean, the American system, each to their own total liberal democracy in the sense that everybody can do whatever they want, and the harmonious way of the Chinese. I could see from both sides that they fight
oh,
for their
100%.
system to get the AGI first, but I see problems in both systems. That's where we get to the point where AGI will be like, yeah, alignment with whom? Let me just take over from here. You guys
Yeah.
had a good run. Man, I don't know. Can we? No, we're not going to leave it there,
But
right?
I don't think AGI is going to be God, right? It might have a bigger body of evidence on which to make an assessment as to this. You make this political choice over that one,
Yeah.
but that isn't actually future proof. Those are just like a risk. That's just like a risk weighting between two different options. Until you play that out in the real world, we're not robots. We don't respond to policy in the same way. If you implement the same policy in Germany versus the UK, it's very different response, cultural response, human response. So I think AGI can like take us one step. It's not going to be able to, unless it, I don't think AGI is going to be able to like sort out our political problems for us. Unless you think AGI is going to take us over and enslave us, which it may well do, but we're still going to have some degree of free will.
There we go into another podcast, because
Yeah,
that's the question: if there is free will, or if we're just a product of
the
DNA and
algorithm.
environment.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
or
What
if
we
it's
get fed.
already. So, what about the simulation? What about, like, what are the chances that we are currently living in the time where all this interesting stuff happens versus all the other times in history that we could be living in, versus what are the chances that it already happened and we're actually reliving this in a simulation? Like, statistically, the chances
Are
are
we in
probably
Twin
higher.
City?
Yeah, yeah. So
No, now you're getting into Truman Show.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No way. Like, no way.
yeah,
You think this is real for sure?
I do.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, that's
Or
good. That's
maybe I
good for
just have,
your.
maybe that's a lack of imagination on my part.
But if you think, if this is moving so fast now, right, that in 40 years we will have the compute to make a virtual world look, feel, touch, and smell like the
This
real
world.
world,
Mm.
who's to say that it hasn't already been done? Like,
Yeah, good point. I mean, for sure, we can go down matrix levels of red pill, blue pill, and
yeah, yeah,
good
yeah, yeah,
nights
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. No,
I
that's.
try not to give that too much thought, but for sure give thought in terms of,
I had a friend who
well,
said it
even,
doesn't matter. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it kind of doesn't matter. You're right.
Yeah.
You still have feelings
Yeah,
and you have um, ambition and passions, and I guess you live by those, right?
I think.
And your needs.
I mean, I don't know. I might be living some other values and just justify them post hoc, and say that's my.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Hey, listen.
we have gone off topic.
I mean, you have not yet told me. Oh, you have kind of told me. So here, let me summarize. What should a 15-year-old be doing right now? It would be both, right? Work hard on AI, working hard with AI, but also working on your own, not so much technical skills because those will be taken over, but your resilience, like your
Yeah, but also I
Your
think your interests, like it's, I do think there will be domain expertise, at least in the short run. None of us can have a crystal ball, but let's put it another way. You have to do something. Imagine everyone gets UBI, but there's probably something you're going to have to do. You might as well figure out what that thing is that you enjoy and that you're kind of good at. And then where it makes sense, use AI to make yourself better at that thing. Um, you see what I mean? I
yeah.
mean, the resilience question I think is fundamental, but resilience question, you always have to break that in early on. Not that it's too late at 15, for sure you can learn more things, but resilience comes from daily trials and it should be in the structure of the curriculum in a kind of more nascent way. I feel like a lot of people have resilience through experiences outside of the education curriculum. But you can teach principles around it for sure. But if you're not living and breathing those principles until you're 15, it's going to be harder to accrue those, I think.
Yeah, that's this John Stuart Mill, right? The two pleasures, the deep pleasure and the shallow pleasure. I'm totally botching it, but like this idea that
I heard of
if
that.
you yeah, if you keep going to the easy thing that gives you pleasure versus the hard thing, or vice versa, the older you get, the harder it is for you to go down the other path, right? So if you've
Oh,
gone down the
interesting. Yeah,
easy,
that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. So I sometimes, is there a positive word for suffering? Like I sometimes wonder in my environment,
Getting into religion now.
no, is it? I don't know. So in my environment, like a lot of times when I see people getting upset about minor things, I have I find myself having this totally old-fashioned thought that if there were a war here right now, which there soon might be, I don't know. If there were a war here, we would be maybe caring about, we would have more serious things to think. And I'm not putting it the right way,
More
but like,
perspective.
yeah,
More
more perspective.
perspective.
Like, so the easier life gets, this is the whole philosophical idea about UBI, right? So the easier life gets, the weaker we become.
Yeah.
And weakness is not something we should strive for, but I don't know who
Yeah.
makes me the person to say that we should all be strong.
Yeah. Or that we should all struggle, and there's different elements of struggle. You know, there's the struggle to, yeah, make enough money to feed your family at the end of the week, and then there's the struggle to pay your mortgage and your kids' school fees, and you're like, well, you could just send them to a state school and have a smaller house, but like I think the level of emotional struggle that those two individuals might feel would probably be on a par, actually.
Right.
It's just around the perspective of what that struggle means. Um, so yeah, I think in a war, I mean, for sure you'd have more like PTSD, but there's probably like the daily struggles with like basic stuff, arguments you're still having in the home or whatnot. I don't think they go away.
So you
What do
think
you think?
our capacity for our resilience rises and
Yeah, I think it rises and falls for sure.
with the
Your
challenges that
emotional
we're faced with.
you're faced with. I think humans are very, in the main, quite resilient, but you'll like compartmentalize that trauma and process it later, maybe depending on the severity of what you went through. But I think in the moment, there's probably only a certain scale at which humans can process the struggle. Um, yeah.
So is there something that people in the global south today have as an advantage growing up
Yes,
with more struggles, right? In
I
that
think
resilience
so.
sense, like growing up into a
Yeah.
world. Yeah.
Like we talked about that at the very beginning, but I saw the study recently about, I think it was like Nigerian young people, and asking them like what kind of like jobs they want and stuff. And most of them don't want to be in formal employment. They want to be doing gig work where they have the freedom to like choose, they have the freedom to like take free time when they want to, but it's precarious and they acknowledge it's precarious, but it's kind of all they've ever known and that doesn't affect them. Whereas I think lots of people in the global north, the precarity of not having, secure salary or security as to what I'll be doing next week actually is kind of terrifying. And I think economically we're moving into that world, the taskification of work in the global north. And I think people in the global south are used to that. They've that's what they've known and they've seen their parents do that as well. And so it's not an emotional burden in the same way. That precarity is not as daunting.
So the global north people will need UBI more than the global south people, even though they're
Mm,
richer.
even though they're richer, maybe, yeah. Is that perspective. But yeah, for sure, like I'll get anxious about all sorts of things. But I still have the NHS. If I was to get hit by a bus, like my
Yeah.
needs would be met. Huh?
Well, let's make it a car. I mean,
A
buses are.
car.
I know. I don't know. If the NHS is that
Although,
can do magic, but uh,
let's say a cyclist, yeah, versus in the US, say, they already live at a degree of um, precariousness more than most Europeans. Um,
yeah, but it's the Wild West, right? They're also richer on average. They also
oh
more
yeah,
innovative, right? And they have people sleeping on the streets. So it's
yeah.
these spectrums. So a lot of times when I speak with companies in Africa and they are working with AI and they're working with a trying to build agents, right? One example is like building an agent to parse CVs. In
Mm.
Europe, people are worried about, the EU AI Act, are you compliant? In Africa, people are like, what are we going to do? We've had 1,500 CVs come in this afternoon. Half of them are photographed off my screen. How am I going to like, you know, I need to parse these somehow. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
AI
yeah,
is good.
yeah,
So it's like the wild south. It's like the wild west is America, and Africa is like just we got to do what we got to do. So in
yeah, yeah,
Europe, it's kind of
absolutely.
sitting on its hands. Like we're anxious because we might not have our 13th salary, but every store up here has a sign in the door, help wanted, and everybody's doing
Yeah,
what I'm trying to do here now, is doing a podcast for a living. It's
yeah,
like
yeah. That's where we are, though, right? And that's like that's the going back to the social contract. It's what Europeans expect, the same as Americans expect, like it comes down to policy decisions like bankruptcy laws in the US versus here, but it also comes down to like a cultural thing. You know, it seems crazy to us that you would have a gun, for example, that you would
yeah,
want to defend. It's
yeah,
crazy to us that you'd even want to defend yourself. Why
yeah,
would I want to defend myself? I have faith in the state to do it, even if some of
yeah,
those faith structures are broken, but still I don't want it in my own hands. It's very much in the DNA. Um, Whereas I think, in the global south, it's just kind of like, oh, come on, like we're so far behind having like a GDPR act. We just, like you said, we just got a volume problem.
yeah, yeah. Hey,
Um,
listen, Georgina, I'm mindful of
we're
your
out of
time.
time.
Uh, you've got other things to do. I love these kinds of conversations. To what extent I pulled you down all kinds of rabbit holes. I apologize for that.
No,
But
it's been
just
so fun.
yeah,
Just talking about the robots. We do
yeah.
another one
Well,
just about robots,
we
can't
haven't
we?
got. Well, that's humanoids, right? The drones and the humanoids. You can't go outside because the drone
Yeah,
will be filming you.
yeah, 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 yeah. We didn't even touch biotech, but next time.
Right, right. And uploading ourselves to the cloud. That's the other one. That's
Yeah,
unless we're already there. So
I think we probably are. Our footprints there for sure.
you think about the simulation. Once you start thinking about it, you can't.
No, I don't actually want to.
You don't. Yeah,
There's only so much space in my anxious brain.
yeah, yeah. Right. Your anxious first world brain.
It's actually my anxious personal brain. Yeah, I'll park that one for now.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Georgina, it's been great.
It has been great. It's so nice to catch up. We covered so many bases.
Some crazy topics. Hey, thanks for doing this though.
Yeah, it's been such a
Maybe next
pleasure.
time we talk about we keep it more to work. We
Development.
keep it more to but how are we going to though? This is the thing. Like I'm kind of find myself apologizing for something I don't how are we gonna talk about the future of work and AI and not go down
Without,
these rabbit holes if we kind of step back like even half a meter to just like look at
yeah,
it from a it's just a crazy time.
100%.
So again,
We're
if we
on the
had it,
frontier.
yeah, if we had this conversation 10 years ago, people would be like, that's crazy. And of course, they're going to say that's crazy now, some of them, but
No,
it's
it's
not crazy. It's just like what
not
you need
that
to be thinking
crazy.
about.
100%.
Right.
And they are.
Right.
All right.
Thanks,
It's so
Regina.
lovely. Thanks, Elvis. Take
Thanks
care.
for being here.